How are we doing? And also, it's Billy Zane!
How many cosplayers in the room? We got? Nice. Keep the dream alive. Love them.
And I see you're cosplaying as your character from Midnight?
Going as me.
Oh, okay, very good. As you want to do.
There was a Phantom lady yesterday who was quite amazing, Miss Phantom. That was you? You were amazing.
Fantastic.
Round of applause. Susan, what is your name now? Sorry, that's Susan. This is Susan, and she really threw down. I was very impressed.
That's awesome. Did you get the ring and everything? Wow, very nice.
She had a horse and a wolf. It was.
You should have called me. I could have played Treat Williams. Never mind. That's all like. Folks, the man next to me, for over 30 years, the Chicago native known as Billy Zane, has made some of the best films in television even better. With his quirky charm, clever acting choices, and ability to play everything from a rakish rogue, a dashing swashbuckler, a narcissistic fop, to an unimaginable bastard. That's a quote.
Stop.
Okay, I will. Sardonic demon or terrifying psycho. He has worked with legendary filmmakers like George Miller, James Cameron, Bob Zemeckis, John Sayles, George P. Cosmatos, one of my personal favorites, Norman Jewison, and in absentia, Edward Jr.
Quite right.
Yes, sir. He has also appeared in fan-favorite video games such as Kingdom Hearts and SSX Tricky. It's tricky. Boy, if you can get that out of your head, good luck. And television shows, of course, like Charmed. Some Drake Devon fans of this? Yeah. DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Community is the Honda boss, which is one of my favorite things ever. And of course, Amazon Prime's The Boys Zaniacs. Please welcome Billy Zane. Well, of course, Billy Zane and I are going to have a little talk today, but of course, we're going to leave time for you to talk to Mr. Billy Zane. So don't worry, we'll have Q&A at the end. But look, I need to get something out of the way, folks. Billy, if you would allow me.
Get it out of the way.
I have a question here. It's true or false. It applies generally. This has been prepared by our research board. Billy Zane, true or false, generally. Listen to your friend Billy Zane. He's a cool dude. He's trying to help you out.
That is true.
That is true. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Well, no, it's funny. You mentioned right at the beginning here that you're playing yourself. And as it turns out, you played a role for which you are, if I may say, universally loathed. But whenever you play yourself, you are universally loved. How did that happen?
That's just the checks and balances of life. It's kind of elegant design right there. That curious line, which was of course an improv on the day, like, none of that was planned. No, I ran into Ben, and he was researching Zoolander by spending a lot of time at the runway shows. I had just moved to New York. Titanic was out, whatever, a couple years before. They try to populate the front row, whoever's hot at the moment. And I was like, Hansel's really hot right now. So I was really hot right then, and I, gladly would sit there and, carouse and pretend to be looking at great clothes. And Ben we just kept running into each other. And he's like, look, I'm doing a party scene. I'd really like you to come and be there. And, some folks are going to be there. It's like, cool, I'll show. And while the scene was, being kind of crafted and he's staging it, he had, Hansel had his crew behind him and he had no one behind him. He was like, Zane, come here, back me up. I was like, gladly, I got you. So we're there, we just kind of walked in and we just, started filming. Nothing was planned, and it was entirely improvised. And Owen, bless him, just like, listen to your friend Billy Zane. And I was like, he's a cool dude. Right? And then like stow Zane or put a quirk, like I just kept saying my name. It was embarrassing and funny, and and then it became this absurd,
The ball keeps rolling.
The ball keeps rolling, at which point, I get more love for playing myself for 5 years than 30 years of character.
I was gonna say.
Whatever.
Except for the fact that, you showed up again in Zoolander 2. You show up in Holmes and Watson as your character.
In the past.
Yeah, as Cal Hoffman.
Time traveling, no, as Billy
Oh,
Zane.
you do it?
Yes.
I misunderstood.
And if you, in the DVD extras, they might even have one of the various versions, which was, look, it's Lord William George Zane Jr. He prefers Billy Zane. Which was
Well, it's really funny. Has anyone listened to the Zoolander commentary with Ben Stiller? No, if you've ever taken the time to do it, that guy likes you. He really, really likes you. Nothing but admiration. It's fun.
A gentleman, and Owen the same. It's been a love, and I have such respect.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we had a real laugh. And curiously, that crazy line, and the true and false of it all, turned into, just kept ballooning into Empire magazine, which is a media-based mag out of the UK. I'm sure you guys know it. Wanted to do a kind of parody article at the promotion. The journalist confessed he wanted to do it at Zoolander 1, got shut down. But by the time 2 came out, he was still working at the magazine, and he's like, listen, I got my way. I want you to do what they call Agony Uncle, which is Dear Abby, an advice column. And I said, I've been dying to do Listen to Your Friend Billy Zane as an advice column. I said, I love that idea, that's mental, sure. Does everything have to come through the lens of cinema to some degree, or through the video? He goes, yeah, maybe, sure, why not? Go ahead. I said, okay, cool. What a cool forum, I'd like to write, whatever. So in came a variety of real issues and questions that dealt with bullying, or I don't know, just name it. It was like real issues, and I gave them thoughtful answers while leaning on the notion of let classic cinema do a lot of the heavy lifting, which I wholeheartedly believe. We go to movies to learn how to be, and in the classics we're kind of taught moral compass, and it shaped a lot of my worldview and outlook. Anyway, I dropped some pearls. Then you got to keep it funny, so you drop a little gonzo journalism like Hunter, just to keep it, kind of wacky. And it caught on. People liked it. And they said, all right, will you do it for another one? I was like, yeah. I did this for a year. And if you archive Empire magazine or look for the archive, Listen to Your Friend, moi, you'll find some funny and possibly practical advice.
I gotta be honest, I'm looking for some answers. I
got you.
Fair enough. Well, so speaking of worldview and shaping that, you grew up in Chicago?
I did.
So was acting always a part of your life, or what was it that made you take that big leap to go to LA?
It has always been part of my life. My parents were actors, semi-professional, I guess, if you could call it that. They were doing theater in Chicago, you can call them professionals. And my sister is an actress, and was at the time. My aunt taught drama, and we had a family full of them. So I didn't really want to be one, but it was in the DNA. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I was more fascinated by, at first it was like, I want to be a stuntman. And then I was like, that looks painful. I want to be then I love the idea of visual effects or model making. I was a cinefex. I was a big fan of cinefex. And looking at how these guys, age this stuff. And I was crap at building models, but I was good at aging and distressing. So I'd buy models my friends would make, I'd distress them, and I'd turn on my Super 8 camera and put in black cat firecrackers and a wick of model glue and blow the shit out of it. At slow motion, I was practicing my special effects cinematic.
My brother's laughing because that's the exact same thing we used to do. I bet you got along with James Cameron. You did.
We did. We totally geeked out on that, absolutely.
I mean, he did Terminator in his garage, basically.
Yeah, but he took it up a notch. The guy would do paintball dog fights on his legs. Not implying. That was dangerous.
Well, so it's brilliant. So you go out to LA, and as I understand it, it's about 3 weeks before you got Back to the Future?
No, that's ridiculous. It was 2.
2. I mean, how was it those 2 weeks as a struggling actor? 2 solid weeks in Hollywood as a young actor trying to make his way.
It's pretty hard.
Yeah. Good grief, 2 weeks and you get Back to the Future. How in the world, did you have any idea what you were doing?
I took a waiting job because I was feeling guilty. And it was just because it was before, Starbucks and before, Coffee Bean, I think, expanded there. There were no cafes. There was no cafe culture in LA in 1980. 85.
Yeah.
And I lived up in Hollywood, up in Beechwood Canyon, and there was a cool little Greek tavern that had a horseshoe diner that reminded me more of like Postman always rings Troy twice.
Nice,
it was like
nice.
very James M. Cain.
Film noir.
And they did a great lunch service, but they were closed at night. And I thought, this place would be awesome if they were just open at night for all the writers and actors just want to hang out and drink Java and listen to jazz, Nighthawks, exactly. So I said, look, I'll work here for like a week if you open at night and we catch fire. And it did, and that place just caned it. They made so much money. And they kept expanding and buying the damn block, of which I never saw it. But I had a place to go at night. And that was kind of cool.
This is being recorded. You can get that on the record. I do think the statute of limitations is run, so I apologize. Well, so interestingly enough, you didn't audition necessarily for MATCH.
No one auditioned for those roles. We all read for Biff.
Yeah.
Knowing he was already cast, because there was no dialogue from him.
Well, now you said it was already cast, because I've heard that J.J. Cohen was the original Biff. Is that correct? Before Thomas Wilson?
News to me.
Oh, okay. Just internet guys, whatever. The point is, so I am curious, so during that period that you filmed, Eric Stoltz, for about 5 weeks, was Marty McFly.
Yes, he was.
Did you end up filming with him, and then did you end up having to go back and do reshoots?
We did a redo.
Wow, what was that like on the set? What was that experience?
First movie out, it was awesome. It's like, how'd you like that? Was that good for you? Okay, let's try it again for real. It was curious to deal with the politics of Hollywood and something so sensitive. Eric was amazing.
Yeah.
There's certainly a very different tone.
Darker.
It was very funny. No, but just more, I don't know, a little more sublime, a little more stolzy, thoughtful. He's funny and he's witty and he has a very mellow, kind of laconic take. It's not as, as Michael J, as comedic or as sitcom at that moment, which I guess it needed to balance, Doc Brown was kind of, you needed those, you had this kind of, taxi pitch, you needed family talk. Taxi. You couldn't, go to actor studio or just kind of, well, how do you balance that?
So you built a time machine, Eric Stoltz. Yes, gotcha. Well, so another local hero. Anybody here ever seen the movie Ruben and Ed? Okay, another local hero here is Crispin Glover.
Oh, yes.
What was it like interacting with and observing Crispin Glover on the set?
He's a 24/7 performance artist, really genuine, and I adore that man. He was nothing but accessible, fun and funny and inclusive. We rode bikes.
Nice.
And he shared his his gym, his workout grid, I was new to town. He made good recommendations, and he was just, I think he always spoke with a smile, which I thought was really, is what you expect, I think. Love it.
Not the Crispin Glover that attempted to kick David Letterman. Not that Crispin.
I mean,
he's fantastic. I love that guy. Actually,
he's wonderful and very talented.
Yeah,
really eccentric, but
amazing.
But I love him. Want more Crispin Glover?
Yes, absolutely. So shortly after that, let's see. I don't mean to be too chronological here, but you were in some great stuff. Critters. Got to work with Emma Walsh.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dead Calm, 1989. Who's seen Dead Calm? Okay. Nicole Kidman, Sam Neill, and Billy Zane. One of these things geographically is not like the other. How in the world did you get involved with an Australian production of a book that was originally an Orson Welles project that, well, I guess for the first time, set you out on the water?
That was my maiden voyage was
Yes.
Crazy at Sea, of which there were many that followed. Philip Noyce, the director, wonderful director, who you know from some of the Clear and Present Danger and Rapid Proof Fence at the other spectrum.
Yeah.
He, lovely man, came and he was casting. And I that morning or afternoon, or I guess the day before, I was auditioning for a Rob Lowe movie. I can't remember which one. and our casting director gave me a script, said, come back in. This was Wally Seaton. She said, come, give this a read. This is, sure. And I read the script, and I thought, oh my God, this is a gift from God.
Yeah, that's
what an incredible role in this amazing tall thriller with virtually 3 people on a boat at sea. And Terry Hayes, who wrote a wonderful script based on this book, which Orson Welles filmed some of, and didn't complete. Lawrence Harvey was in it, and he died during the filming, so they never completed. So it had this weird, ominous kind of thing around the movie. And I went in to audition for this, and I remember wearing the exact same suit as Philip.
Nice.
It was some
seriously
kind of, no, it was the 80s. We looked like we'd robbed the Miami Vice.
I call Crockett.
And I know, right? And no, it was some very over-relaxed, crushed pseudo not silk blue kind of. It looked like pajamas. It was like, what are you wearing? It's ridiculous outfits, but they're like, yeah, it looks better on you. And I thought, oh, I'm done. This is not going to go well. And improvised a bit. We made it funny where it really wasn't supposed to be.
Well, that's just it. I mean, okay, so that movie literally has a shotgun shown in the first act that goes off in the third act. I mean, it's the perfect Chekhov, play. And I gotta tell you, I was watching that, and I'm like, oh, your character, Huey Warner, is that shotgun. You were coiled physicality in that movie. How in the world did you get yourself in a place physically and mentally to play a character that is both that physical and that unhinged? Because you're a very calm dude. I don't know how to...
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so good.
I was 21. Every 21-year-old's like that.
Yeah. Brain's not fully formed.
He's just like, It was an interesting study because he wasn't just crazy for the sake of crazy. This wasn't premeditated. He was a victim of trauma, of an amazing amount of trauma, and had no notion that he was going to survive when rescued, having basically seemingly liberated all these people who were doomed anyway and were kind of on a dark path due to another character. It kind of hints to it. I was more Sorcerer's Apprentice unknowingly, and there was copious amounts of drugs and booze and party time over on this boat, so there were bad decisions being made by these characters. And, the reality and the world came flooding in, at which point, wait a minute, okay, just wants to sail off into the sunset with a happy ending. Let's just erase that. Excuse me.
Hello?
Oh, hey, Nicole. Yeah, we're all here. No, it's not. It was a really interesting character study in terms of truly approaching this from a point of view of possibility, and it was a really interesting analysis. So yeah, it was pretty pent up.
Well, it seems like that started you down the road of doing something you would have to do quite a bit, which is, I think the phrase you've used before is mind understanding, for the purposes of showing empathy to your characters who may not be of the highest reputation and moral character.
Yeah, don't chase sympathy if that comes, so be it. And not that that's an objective or a target. It would be worrisome to some degree if it were. But understanding is all you could really ask for in the journey of the most complex people you play.
Yeah.
So it's trackable. So you go, I get why that person's behaving that way. Not to jump in your page, but Cal was a product of bad programming. We generally loved this one. We could not fathom the process. A bohemian rating, on scale, and being a suitor of equal station. That was just boom. How did that process? Huey was a victim of trauma. The demon in Demon Knight was just a demon. It was rocking out and being completely stupid, and there was no justification for that other than cheap thrills and laughs.
I was going to say, good grief, the movie. Who's seen Demon Knight? Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight? So I was surprised how many people brought this up on the FanX website, because, I mean, it's gosh, it's the Thank you. There we go. No, fun time. You look like you are having Nicholson Joker levels of fun in that movie.
That's a lot.
And that's pretty high. Would that be a correct assessment? What was that experience
That
like?
would be a correct assessment. It was one of the more liberating and satisfying experiences because the character wasn't necessarily that entertaining, shall we say, or whimsical.
Somewhat one-dimensional.
Page.
Got something to it, I think.
Yeah, there was a lot of improvisation that was encouraged and egged on ever more by Mr. Dickerson, the director, and thank God, it was a great collaboration. You know, he hired me. He was a big fan of Dead Calm, and that was what led to that hire.
Well, so you didn't get that through Zemeckis. I thought maybe Zemeckis had actually kind of brought you on board.
I don't know to what extent I'm sure there was an endorsement there, but I don't. I think it was ideally introduced, I think, by Dickerson.
Right on.
But yeah, that was simply just a lot of fun and invention on the day. Just a lot of creation, a lot of wacky, and it balanced the horror and the great in camera and the creature effects, and it really played to the genre and became kind of a starter drug for horror comedies for a lot of people. I mean, generations were like, you know, this movie was my entry into this madness that I see before you.
Evil Dead vibe to the whole thing. It's great. And you got to work with Dick Miller.
Yeah.
Anybody know who Dick Miller is? Character actor Dick Miller. Okay, say all these people. Anyway, if you saw him, you'd recognize him. He in The Burbs, he's the guy that says "naked ladies." Anyway, I don't know. Is it
CCH Pounder?
CCH Pounder. Good grief. William Sadler, Thomas Hayden Church, who you've worked with a couple of times.
That's right.
Very nice. And Tombstone. Yep. Well, so in 1995, there was another film which we've already mentioned, and that is, and I have such a soft spot for this, and the other 30s serial revivals of the time, The Phantom. Smash Good grief. You know, as I watched that movie's got elements of Tarzan, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Sorcerer, Wages of Fear. I mean, good grief. Right to the bridge. But you seem to know exactly the movie in the best way possible.
It's a nice statement.
Well, I think so. I mean, you both, I mean, your dialogue. Your dog's a wolf. I know. I mean, good grief.
With a smile.
With a smile.
And in there was the essence of the character. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
The differentiator was this was a happy hero. Well adjusted. Really likes his job.
This is not Batman.
Not a sociopath. Oh, white hat hero, dare I say.
Yeah.
Just like Jungle Lord, animal friends, got a girlfriend. What's the problem?
Christy Swanson doing her best Catherine Hepburn.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Well, no, but you took the role seriously in the fact that, I gotta say, you looked like you were more Adam West than anything else in that suit. I mean, like you had to actually work out and train for this movie. That was no joke. What did you have to do to get into shape for that role?
Lift a lot of heavy things.
Do it.
Yeah, they were talking about a rubber suit and fake muscles or whatever.
That's all Michael Keaton. Nobody needs
And
it.
I was like, nah, this is like 1936, and he's a jungle lord, kind of, you know. It's like, why wouldn't he? Well, he should just have the beefcake, and you know, it's like it would look silly, like it would look like what it is, and it wouldn't make any sense. Of course, after I said that, I realized what I just I was not a gym rat, to say the least. All right, I guess that's my life for the next
6 months. Yeah.
It was actually more like a year. We were going down the path with a version that Joe Dante was going to direct. It was a different script.
Are you for real?
I'm for real. Michael Douglas was producing it, and it went into turnaround. And usually these things do not recover. Like the fact that this movie went back in the books, you know, with Evans, Robert Evans, Robert Evans, bless him.
The kid stays in the picture.
Dorian. Thank you, Bob. Produced a couple little movies.
Godfather.
Chinatown.
Godfather 2.
Maybe you heard of him.
That one weird bullfighting movie you did back in the 50s. Let's not bring that up. And no one's interested in that at all. Sorry. We diverged. Sorry.
Stop at Chinatown.
Okay.
Listen to your friend, Billy Zane.
He's trying to help me out. Put a cork in it, little miss. Okay, got it.
So it came back, which was unheard of, and that was just a great gift. And and by that point, I was, inflatable. I was like, "Can we please film this? I'm going to explode. Can I stop working out?" Like, Taylor, won't return my calls.
I think we heard somebody said I appreciated it. Okay. We get one of these. We get one of these per session. No, we don't. We can do more. That's fine. Cool. Well, obviously, all of this was leading up to a bigger boat. Which, by the way, I know I'm not supposed to say boat. I'm supposed to say ship. I know that was made very clear to some of the actors by James Cameron. Not allowed to say boat. Must say ship.
That is true.
Okay, gotcha. The joke was even apparently thrown into the movie. So there's a particular film that you made called I Woke Up Early the Day That I Died.
That's right.
Anybody heard of Ed Wood? Planet 9 from Outer Space, Glitter Glenda?
Johnny Depp played it?
Yes, absolutely. You actually, by the way, I'm just messing with you right now. We're going to talk about Titanic, don't worry. But I really love the idea that you produced and helped make a film and started a film based on his last script.
Excuse me, that's a silent film.
A silent film, very good.
That was based on Ed Wood's final opus,
Oh,
which was curiously about a thief with a sonic disability. Only Ed Wood would do that. And went on the crime spree, looking for some loot that he stashed in the coffin.
dressed as a nurse, not that there's anything wrong with
Escaped an
that.
asylum dressed as a nurse, starts the movie in drag, and then busts out and steals some clothes, and steals transportation and a weapon, and he's just trying to find this money he rips off and then hides in a coffin during a ceremony, and then falls into a grave, gets knocked out, and comes to, and the money's gone, and he has to pick his way through these hired mourners. This is all in the script. I didn't write it. It's paid mourners who basically comprise, are made up of Will Patton and Sandra Bernhardt and Tippi Hedren and
Tippi Hedren from The Birds is in this movie.
Eartha Kitt performs a musical number.
You got Bud Cort. You got Bud Cort as a shoe sniffer.
It's not since it's a mad world. I think have you had a lineup of a cast like this?
Was this John Ritter's last performance?
John Ritter.
Carol Stroiken, the giant from Twin Peaks, which we didn't mention. I apologize.
Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
Everybody was in this movie because everyone wanted to make one a silent movie, two an Ed Wood movie. It was like John Waters doing Buster Keaton, and was the first movie to also be leaked to the internet in its entirety.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, in 2000. So it was all there, and you can find it in German bootlegs.
Thanks.
But it's a guilty pleasure. It should be seen projected in 35 because it's cool.
Very nice.
But yeah. Anyway, I woke up early the day I died, and the reason I woke up early that day, this was the creative antidote to Titanic, which of course was super A-list, mega budget, 7 months of, this glorious, unsurpassed undertaking. And my, punk rock self just wanted to, change the channel in a heart.
Yeah.
Much to my representation's dismay. What are you doing? No! It's a silent movie comedy about the worst filmmaker ever made. Youth. That worked really well for me.
Well done. All right. Well, look, you're here. You've earned it. 1997, little film called Titanic. Anybody seen this? By the way, I was reminded that your character's full name is Caledon Hockley, which, by the way, sounds like a Harry Potter spell. It's pretty evil. I don't know.
It does. It's after 2 towns in Canada.
Oh, really?
Or I think that's it. Yeah, near where Jim grew up.
Cool. Very cool. Well, so it's kind of funny. I'm a little admission. I hadn't watched this movie since 1997. Sorry, but rewatching it, I saw it with fresh eyes. And not only is your performance fantastic, but the movie actually pays homage in a lot of ways to Stanley Kubrick. There are elements of The Shining in this film. It almost plays like a horror story, especially as they're going into the ballrooms from Rose's point of view. And I noticed in the film that Jack gets point of view shots. Like literally, the camera takes over as Jack. We get point of view shots from Rose, but we never get points of view from Cal. His viewpoint is always on the outside. And I'm kind of curious if you felt that his viewpoint was adequately portrayed in the film, and given that James Cameron, this is a long question, sorry. Given that James Cameron had backgrounds for even the extras, what did you know about Cal that we as the audience did not, that allowed you to play him effectively?
We kind of determined that as far as screen time and Mark, you know, he really carried the age.
Interesting.
And its hubris. And the guilty pleasure around that was being really just not disinterested, but just not really particularly bothered by the sinking. I was like,
it's gonna work out.
of course it's getting off. Where's the girl? And that just made us laugh to no end. After every time it's a cut, we'd just be like, "Whoa, what an asshole!" and the pleasure of playing someone who was just like, sinking, schminking. Are you gonna finish that?
Give me that baby is a human shield, please. Yeah.
And that was just so much darn fun. And was tragic in itself because he just, you know, he loved her totally.
Yeah. But it just wasn't. Sounds like you say, he just wasn't equipped for it. Yeah. Interesting. Well, so it's kind of funny as you go back and watch that film. Your first appearance is coming out of this automobile, this long line of automobiles, and for the first time it hit me. Boy, that looks like The Great Race, and you look a lot
like The Great Leslie?
Like Jack Lemmon, sorry.
Oh.
Like Dr. Fate, sorry.
Which is a compliment.
Not Tony Curtis.
Well, coming out of there, I smiled. I thought it was like a ding.
Oh, fair enough.
You have to see this movie.
I stand for
a point of reference. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't know if you're naming it because I mentioned it. The Great Race.
No, I didn't.
I play it for my kids all the time.
Awesome.
Blake Edwards,
Yeah.
master of masters, probably my favorite filmmaker. You know, all the Pink Panther movies and then some. Breakfast at Tiffany's. Or was that Don? Am I blanking?
No,
That's Blake Edwards.
Yeah,
That's Blake Edwards. The Great Race, with a turn by Jack Lemmon, who plays two characters. Professor Fate, you know, this guy. It's wacky races. Everyone, it's just a cartoon. And the lovely Natalie Wood, Peter Falk. Incredible movie. Watch it tonight. It's just gorgeous.
Well, I was kind of curious then. Did you use him, or were there any other any other actors that you attempted to emulate to develop that style to play Cal Hockley within that era?
No.
No, this was pure Zane.
I mean, it wasn't me, but it was like, again, you just imagine understand the period and the context.
Yeah.
And the whimsy, you know, and the fact, you know, one of my favorite lines was, you know, Dawson, you know, gee, you know, the pleasure of, I was passing the gentleman. Like, having no clue that would be completely insulting to somebody, but having just such pleasure with it.
Yeah.
Like, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. He wasn't a particularly bitter dude. He enjoyed himself and his wealth and station.
And he's kind of the hero of his own story.
But just was,
it worked out.
But was just blindsided by, you know, a brat. And
listen to the patriarchy, kids. He's trying to help you out.
And it did. But, you know, a great villain, you know. It wasn't the iceberg, for Christ's sake.
Well, so that begs the question.
2,000 people? No. Saved a child. One up.
So that begs the question. It's been 22 years. Has the public, you know, forgiven you for being an unimaginable bastard, or?
I think he's become imaginable.
Imagine.
over time.
But once again, it's funny because it seems like Billy Zane, as Billy Zane, is the Zane we all approve of. Well, no, it's funny. So and look, you're all going to be welcome in just a few minutes here, or just a minute here, to ask questions about the Titanic. Both the ship, the movie, the production, the prequel.
Geez, what am I at? The thesaurus or the dictionary? Encyclopedia Britannica? I don't know anything about the boat.
Encyclopedia Titanica, to be fair, but that's...
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, but you've got a great career, and I'm just here. All right, the point is, in 2001, so in contrast to Zoolander, which is this, bizarre, wacky, insane film, you made actually a very serious appearance in a film that I think is criminally underrated. Not to bring everybody down, but I think it's incredibly important. That's a movie called The Believer with Ryan Gosling. Anybody seen The Believer with Ryan Gosling? If you haven't, it's no surprise. There was this little incident called 9/11 that sort of took the energy out of this film, even though it did. It made quite a splash at Sundance and Cannes, and you play a character named Curtis Zane, who is a wealthy, charming, intellectual. So far, all, Billy Zane. Not so much Billy Zane, trying to mainstream a modern fascist movement. And he was also secretly sponsoring a violent white supremacist training camp, and he manipulates Gosling. And it's interesting because you're such a physical character. You look at Cal Hockley, who is so vibrant, but yet you chose here to play this character bookishly, subtly. He's even, I would say, avuncular in the way he dresses and physically passive despite his incredibly violent rhetoric. I'd love to know how you made those decisions and how you got involved with this project.
I was approached to play the role. It was a complex character. I think Dead Con was the other calling card for that.
Yeah.
I could have crafted something unique out of this, and I wanted to play against type here. It's based on. I'm pretty sure it was based on a true story. Now, come to think of it.
It was actually.
Where Ryan plays a character with a great level of self-loathing, who it's revealed is in fact he's Jewish, but is a skinhead. Trying to bomb synagogues. It was just kind of really a very, very peculiar personal journey. And one of his first roles that really put him on the map as one of our great dramatic actors. The approach I took to Curtis was simply, I thought, what would be, this wasn't American History X. This was, what would be more frightening, or as a cautionary tale, was perhaps to portray this person like a 70s liberal. So I modeled him after like Warren Beatty in Parallax View.
Nice.
And complete with kind of shaggy hair and professorial specs and faded denim and tone and quality, but the stuff coming out of his mouth was just like, was
way too familiar.
Was really tricky and apparently and really horrible, and it was meant to put you off guard and actually question and wonder where this is. That's going.
Yeah.
It was simply, I hate to make it too simple by saying playing opposites, but trying to mine a complexity that,
less is more.
What is, to a degree, but what is I'm a firm believer in the function of, and not just cinema, but, theater as well. And what was the function here? Cautionary tale.
Awesome. No, it's All right, one last thing before we go. You're about to play Marlon Brando, or maybe you've already filmed it. The film is called Waltzing with Brando, and it's about something I find fascinating. The building of his private island. Whereas I remember he actually would fly frozen Big Macs into...
Maybe later
in life. That was later. Tell us about this project of playing Marlon Brando. This seems incredibly daunting.
The project is called Waltzing with Brando, and it's based on the memoirs of an architect named Bernard Judge, who came out of the Bucky in Fuller School and built geodesic domes in California. He was one of the more progressive architects. And leave it to Brando, ever bleeding edge in his worldview, walking the walk for civil rights, for indigenous rights. I had no idea about his position and really modern stance on environmental rights. And in 1969, this just wasn't done. No one was thinking about sustainability and closed loop and zero carbon footprint. He was a voracious reader and loved really smart people and dialogue on such subjects, and wanted to build a compound that would house great ideas and great thinkers to help shape culture.
Awesome.
And so he, wanted to build his house, and he told the locals that he promised to do it without leaving them,
This was
garbage
in
Tahiti,
yeah.
an island. So he bought an island after Mutiny on the Bounty, and sat on it for a little bit, and was like, all right, we got to do this. And this is it had never been done before. It's an insurmountable task. It's like Fitzcarraldo. And he hires this dude who, takes on the challenge, and they become, fast friends, but that moves between friendship and, contractor and employee, and hijinks ensue. It's like,
it's Brando?
It's an island, and there's no power, no water, and getting the gear on their level and the various visitors.
Human
and,
animals.
and the spiraling costs. So it's like accounts are like, right, I think you better go do, this little Italian gangster movie because we run out of cash. All right, fine. A little thing called The Godfather, right?
Oh, wow.
And, Last Tango in Paris, or whatever the hell else you fit in between. And when you realize that behind the scenes of those classic pieces of cinema was, a very thoughtful and conscious play that has, never been more prescient than today. This was an atoll, barely above sea level, and the Marshall Islands are going to disappear in months. I mean, we're witnessing what's happening right now. We saw it in the Bahamas. It's like shocking. So to have the foresight of what the planet would do over time without our intervention, then what makes this movie very interesting for people who are fascinated by Brando, fascinated by a story of this nature, want to go to the tropics for about 2.5 hours, and are concerned about rising sea levels.
And once again, you're back on the water.
Instant actor.
All right. Well, hey, we have about 10, maybe a little more minutes left. Please line up if you have questions. If there are things that you need to get off your chest regarding the inimitable Billy Zane. Who, where, what, why, how, those are questions.
All right. So I want to ask a question. A couple of years ago, you started you were starred in a production called Winter Dragon, based on the prologue for The Wheel of Time.
That's right.
And I'm just wondering what your experience was with that, and how you ended up involved in that project.
This is a series of books. They compare to kind of a Game of Thrones-like experience, fantasy, with an avid following and readership. My friend was one of the producers, and they needed a placeholder to actually air some content, to put it on air in this amount of time, to go through the legal processes they did in order to now they're actually in production finally. I came on as we had to basically film this 25-minute teaser to the piece quite rapidly. I'm involved in the production. I have an option to play the character or not. I think he turns up in the second season. We'll see how the first season goes. And they're finally making it, which is great, because it's a really interesting piece of material.
So you have an option in this new production to play the character.
I'm sorry?
To play the character.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's actually my exact same question.
Oh, all right.
But so you mentioned mentioned you have an option. What are your current opinions on the casting and what's currently going on with the production of the real time?
Well, interestingly, when I go back, I'm just about to kind of, do a bit more of a deep dive in the exploratory. It just started. That process has just begun. So I'm not as deeply hands-on to it. So I'm looking forward to getting an update. To be honest, I don't really have much to report. But it's been, it's been in kind of more in the legal department for the last couple of years, and now finally, apparently, literally before I came here, I'm like, all right, we're moving. It's like, good, it's going. I look forward to an update.
Great. Well, I'd love to see you reprise the role.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
What was your favorite scene in Titanic that you filmed?
The breakfast scene, I think. Flipping the table.
Flipping the table.
Yeah.
Some Huey Warner action. Yeah.
Which, I can't remember, Mike. I'd like to say that wasn't what was intended, but we realized the quickest way to get there was to toss the table.
Full Martin Sheen on that, really. Yeah.
And much to the dismay of the wardrobe department, which only had 2 of those dresses. I only got orange juice on the belt of 1 after like 7 flips. Wow, that was a lot.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. What was it like working with James Cameron on Titanic?
I have nothing but respect for the fella. He was first in the water and last out every day. So complaining about being wet or cold was pointless. And he was funny. No one knows him for his humor. Smart people are funny, or funny people are smart for me. I think it's the latter.
And the guy came up with Corbin. How could he not be
The
funny?
guy's funny.
Yeah.
It drives you to your best if you're up to it. It's got not a lot of time for if you're not, but pushes you. And that's a very good thing if you can embrace and ride that ride. We just got on like a house on fire.
Yeah.
Love him.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi.
There you go.
I'm too short for this. My question is, what was your favorite part playing with Rose in Titanic? What did you love about that dynamic?
Working with Kate was, a consummate pleasure. Right? She's a wonderful actress, but a really wonderful human being, and really trying to find the connective tissue and, the thoughtful nuance between these sometimes often bold strokes between them was really quite fun to do. Which could have, we achieved with a gesture. One of our favorite scenes, and of course when it's cut, a lot of the fat was cut out of it, but, the slap scene was, a horrible moment and an all-time low for a cow, and it sounded really loud and violent. It looked terrible. But it was, the moment we shared after the fact, while the guy was, the steward was telling us we should get dressed and ready to go, and seemed to ignore our little domestic in the middle of it, and we kind of looked at each other like, even despite that, there was this like, can you go out? It was just like, and they kept that in, and we had like, I think that was, I don't know, it was again, the finer points and weird connection that actors find between lines that speak volumes to a very complex relationship, and that we did often and really enjoyed, I think. So.
Thank you. All right, we've got time for maybe 2 questions.
Oh, we got time for 4.
Okay. Zane has spoken.
So I was wondering, you were in one of the last episodes of Psych.
The last episode, so.
There you go, the last episode.
Series finale.
Yeah, and it was awesome, and you're awesome. So I was wondering.
No, Michael, it's not
You have awesome powers. Project.
Acting, project.
Okay. I got it back. Did you watch Psych? Did you know how much they mentioned you? Is that how you got involved, or how did they get you to be in their season?
They have made quite a few attempts to have me on the show. I had many invitations, which I gratefully accepted, but then scheduling permitting was just like Murphy's Law. I was either working or out of town, working or just out of town. It never lined up over the years. So finally it was like, look, it's our last episode. Would you please just get to Canada? I was like, all right. And I loved hearing about the references from friends and fans. Probably haven't seen half of them. I look forward to one day just binging that, among others. And they were nothing but lovely. It was such a wonderful set. I was so flattered over, it was such an adoring and I just whimsical and goofy point of reference. And I was just grateful. It touched me.
Okay, I apologize. I'm getting it. So let's just do one last question.
Oh wait, how about you all combine? Huddle.
Yes.
Huddle.
Ultron this way.
No, decide what your question's going to be. 3. I'm serious, don't say it. Turn. Make a decision. What's your question?
We are sisters and we absolutely love you, but
Only you, Phantom, and Tombstone.
Yes. Yes, but my question is, I loved you in Phantom. I thought you were so hot and so fun. My question is, what was one of the things that you liked about Phantom? And are you going to do any romantic comedies?
Only you, if you haven't seen
Thank
it.
you. I love the character of the Phantom, and my favorite thing about him is he had no superpowers. He was just super humane. He was happy and had moral compass and disarmed. He didn't kill. Always gave benefit of the doubt, and that was important to share with generations, and really important to reinstill and remind our kids that heroism is not anti-heroism. Right on. Snarky and dark ain't cool. It's like there is success comes from living in one's full light, and he shone brightly, and I love that about him. Romantic comedies, heck yeah, that's my MO. I came to Hollywood to tap dance and get a pie in the face. I didn't know I was going to go crazy at sea, and they keep you doing the same thing. I'm game. You got one? I'm in. Well, speaking of